Hey there, and welcome to Solidify Solutions channel. I'm Daniel Zabala, and today I have a really exciting guest with me, someone who works at the intersection of business strategy, operations, and project integration. Bryan, thank you so much for being here today with me on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Daniel. Glad to be here, sir.
Absolutely. Bryan, you work with businesses and help them with integrating, positioning in terms of projects and softwares like ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning software. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do more in depth, and how would you describe project integration consulting to someone who's never heard of it before?
Awesome. Well, the first thing I'll start with is an illustration that I use. If you can imagine a big marching band going around a corner, and that marching band has been marching on the same street for years and years and years. They've grown. Their trombone and clarinet sections have grown, and now they're marching in step. They're doing a great job, but they realize that they're running out of room on their current street, and they're going to have to make a pretty significant turn. What we do is help that band make the turn. That inside person has to take little tiny steps to get around the curve. The outside person has to take huge steps to stay in line with their organization and keep them playing their instruments at the same time, because you can't just shut the business down to make the changes you need to. So I'll start with that illustration. It seems to resonate with folks. That's really what we do at the end of the day, is when organizations realize they're going to have to make significant change, and usually that requires a dollar investment in order to grow and continue to move forward. We help with that change navigation, is what we call it. And we make sure that those organizations stay healthy, can keep marching forward, keep their cadence. This is what we call it, a cadence consulting, keep their cadence moving forward and get integrated. Usually it requires software, but a lot of times that software change requires also process flow reimagining and reengineering. And then that leads to HR shifts, and really optimizing the FTE headcount that you have as well to move forward with the growth that you desire for your organization. So we really focus on organizations that are growth minded, not necessarily cost cutting minded organizations. And those organizations usually range from 30 million to $300 million and are in the industrial space. So we do construction, we do manufacturing, we do distribution, and any of those companies that really want to start growing, we help them with their software integration. And we also help with M&A integrations as well. So usually that's the hurdle, is systems and getting these systems in place, CRMs and ERPs, as you mentioned, Daniel. So that's the work that we do, and we've got a great team that does it.
Fantastic. How did you get into this field, and what is your background that led you to specialize in project change integration?
Yeah, so I was a pastor for 20 years, Daniel, and but I wasn't the typical pastor. I'd come into a role, build, change everything, grow teams, cast some new vision, and really get things set up for long-term success. But once it got kind of into management role and slow change, change iteration mode, I got really bored. So when I was 30, I realized, gosh, I probably won't be the typical pastor. So probably be better suited as a consultant. So in my 30s, I took jobs that would allow me to get set up to do that. And when I was in a very large church in Dallas, I got to lead a transition of an ERP, and it was a church ERP, but it was a large scale project. And really that wet my whistle, if you will, for large scale change management and software integration, software adoption. And so in 2021, I moved into the industrial space doing that very same work. And we've been burning and churning ever since for the last 5 years.
Fantastic. So when you say, in the context of business, when talking about project change integration, what does that look like at a practical level? Like, can you give me
Yeah.
a real world example?
Yeah. So I like to go down to that team level, as I mentioned, with the band, really. So let's talk about a team in central Missouri. It was a planning team, a production planning team, and they had already gone live with their ERP and had just kind of had this ERP thrown on them. And this team, these poor guys were still doing all the spreadsheet calculations, and they literally had a sticky note system where they would go put jobs, sticky notes on to each manufacturing team's benches, if you will. So in addition to managing all of the travelers, they'd have a stack of travelers, and then the planning team would go put sticky notes which one job they wanted them to do that day. So they were still doing that and having to enter all the data into the new ERP to make sure that the CFO of their purchasing oversight could actually see the data. So it was a mess, and these poor guys were having a really hard time. So what we did was we came in and walked them through a new process flow, and their job description changed. Their job description went from figuring out which jobs need to happen to managing the data going into the ERP, so the ERP could help them decide which jobs they needed to do that day, and subsequent weeks gave clarity on to purchasing and really helped the company get ahead on production, both day to day, week to week, and I would say month to month as well. So that was a huge paradigm shift for that team. Try to figure out all the incoming orders and all the incoming data, and look at current inventory levels, and that's what the ERP did for them. So what ended up happening is their 12-hour days went down to 6 to 8 hour days, and they had so much bandwidth that the manager of that team actually got promoted because his best use wasn't necessarily as a sticky note guy. His best use was actually training and making sure the lines. So he moved even more into quality, but he still got to oversee the planning. And so it was a really good success story on what we do. So but that took 3 to 4 months of really heavy planning, process reengineering, and redoing their SOPs, day-to-day SOPs. So that's an example I like to tell because it was really fun.
So, how does project change integration differ from just general project management? Like, where does one end and the other begin?
Yeah, so we start with a really holistic viewpoint. So the bridge we're building is between what needs to happen, a new ERP, a new CRM, and the strategic side. The strategists come up with what needs to happen, but building that bridge from what needs to happen to how you're actually going to do it is the bridge that we build. So project management is really kind of the in-between steps. So we do project planning, we call it the surveyor. So we look at the whole landscape of the organization, its past, its present, its future, and we lay out a plan for how we're going to build to that North Star that a company has decided they want to go to. So that's the visionary. Now they said, okay, cool, we need to rebuild some things. That's what we need to do. But the surveyor gives you the lay of the land on how you're actually going to start executing on the what needs to happen. So that's what we do. We do a surveyor, we do project planning overall, what projects need to happen, and then we architect those projects. We go down into the weeds and say, what are the deliverables, the milestones that need to happen in each one of these projects to actually hit the execution, the executable deliverable of the project itself. And then we'll get in the weeds too, and we'll actually manage those projects. We'll actually rebuild process flows, rebuild SOPs. So that's the flow of the work that we do. It's not just PM box checks, right? It's actually designing bespoke work for an organization, because no organization is the same as another one. Everybody's in a different place. You have a different customer base. You have a different product. You have a different location, culture that you're sitting in with your physical locations. You have different clients and customers you're trying to sell to, and you have a different history than any other organization. So those factors multiplied exponentially require bespoke work to be done to actually build that bridge when a company is ready to move forward and grow.
Brian, are there any industries that benefit more than others from project change integration, or is it more of a just size and stage of the business?
I don't think there's industries. We focus on the industrial space because the margins are so tight and the gaps are so large in the industrial space that we found we like to say, what's the best value that we can add into the marketplace? And our skills are best added in that blue collar industrial space, because gosh, trying to get a project lead on a construction project to actually put in data and manage their data and make that easy for them and get them to learn a new tool so that the decision makers back at headquarters can actually see progress, manage costs, and manage performance of that project manager's team. That's a hard nut to crack. It's a really hard thing to do, and to undo years and years of behavioral patterns and like ruts in how you've actually executed work. So I like that space because it's the best use case for our work. Now, that being said, Daniel, I will say that the education space and the healthcare space are two other very similar, have very similar issues where you try to throw new software at teachers every year. They don't actually know how to use it. Whiteboards are pretty standard, like the smart boards now, but gosh, it took way too long to get teachers to actually learn how to use it and incorporate it into their lesson plans and all those kind of things. And change management and change navigation, as we call it, actually will get your ROI going faster on that investment that you've made in both in education. Let's talk about healthcare too, because and hospitals and clinic groups are notorious for throwing software at their nurses, doctors, and admins, and they just go, "Nope, not doing it." I've heard of $5 to $7 million systems that were just money down the drain because nobody actually adopted the software. So yes, there's absolutely opportunity in most verticals, but we love the industrial space as well.
Let's talk about the bottom line for a second. So, as a
Yep.
CFO, I'm constantly looking at the bottom line for clients.
Yep.
And then owners obviously care about the cost too, even if they're growing and growth minded and focused on growth. Like, how does this change integration management affect the bottom line for those that are maybe hesitant? They're growing, they know they need it, but they're hesitant to pull the trigger because of the cost.
So would you build a house without a foundation?
Absolutely not.
Right. So that's it. The house is what you see. That's what you see. That's the software. That's getting set up for how you live, how you work. But if you don't have the fundamental remapping of your business to actually build that house upon, doesn't matter. You're going to lose the ROI. So at the end of the day, when you look at the bottom line, it's risk mitigation. So let's talk about two case studies where there was no change management involved. Number one, it was the company that I just mentioned earlier. It was a KKR roll-up. They had purchased 4 or 5 manufacturers in the wastewater space and had thrown an ERP at them. All the check boxes were checked from the software side. So the software company had washed their hands of it, but no one had actually adopted the software. We went into the operations team. We said, how does the ERP affect your day-to-day now? I said, it didn't. What are you talking about? It didn't really affect our day-to-day. We're fine, because they didn't utilize it one iota. So when you're looking at ROI on a software investment and the entire operations team isn't actually using it, you are losing money hand over fist, right? Not to mention the fact that in the same company, because no one was using the ERP, their controller had to rebuild every transaction from quote to cash manually every month close. They went through 4 controllers in 2 years. How much money did that cost you? It cost millions of dollars for them to poorly implement something that should have brought them a really high ROI day one.
Seen that.
One, yeah, yeah. So one other case study was a growing company who was so hyper focused on top line that they forgot that they had to reimagine their processes for a growing company to the bottom line. They had implemented an ERP in 2019 for one site at $20 million. They had grown to over $100 million and 9 sites in the next 5 years. Every process that they had broke. And they were actually, their bottom line went from, I won't say numbers but it got cut in half. And they started losing millions of dollars in inventory every year to theft and not their teams just grabbing inventory and basically giving it away because they had no system controls. At one site, they could have a spreadsheet and everybody knew what was happening. But at 10 sites, that management became untenable. So we had to come in and rebuild from quote to cash. We had to rebuild their entire structure, implement a wireless warehouse management system. And boy, howdy, they're doing a lot better than they were a couple years ago when we engaged with them. So they needed some restructuring on the corporate side as well. So we helped them through that transition of the leadership restructure as well. But to your initial question, when you're looking at an implementation of software, the software company is going to ask for a big chunk of money for implementation. That's only half of it. That's getting the software ready for you. The other half is you have to work on getting your teams ready for the software. And because your teams have day jobs and work that they have to continuously do to meet the demands of your clients, you need another third party to help you with that piece of the bridge. That's why, because if you only build the software implementation side, it's half of a bridge. and you're going to start seeing your money just go into the river after you go live, day after day. So it's really a risk management play on the front end, and anybody in the ERP space will tell you you cannot do this by yourself. And if you try, you will lose both the investment that you made, and you will start losing cash to the bottom line. So not only will you lose the investment, and the ROI will not be there at all. It'll just be money money down the river, if you will. But you'll also start losing cash from where you were. So you'll, again, it's just half a bridge. You're heading down the cliff if you don't build both sides of the bridge.
It sounds like it's more expensive to not hire a change management consultant in this case than to, I'm sorry, it's more expensive. Yeah, more expensive not to hire someone than to hire for sure. And same thing in my line of business, for those business owners that are growing, especially once you hit the $1 to $2 million mark in annual revenue, there's a lot that has to change in your business. Your business has to completely change, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you can't grow beyond that number and continue doing the things the way you have been doing them, and expect to be profitable. That $1 to $2 million mark is a weird sweet spot in that you could double your revenue. You could literally go to 4 million and make the same or less as an owner, because if you don't have someone like myself to help you with strategy and understand all your data, so you can look at the
yeah,
bottom
yeah,
line, implement those strategies to manage your cost of labor, your labor cogs, your operating expenses, to make sure that you're able to pay yourself a profit, not
yeah,
just
yeah,
owning a really big expensive day job.
yeah.
uh, what, in your experience, are common operational problems that project change integration solve? You mentioned CRMs and ERPs. Are there others, or can you kind of elaborate on those?
Yeah, so I'll focus on shifting from, especially with the advent of agentic AI, and a lot of these softwares introducing those formally into their SaaS offering. You really go from, like, I got to figure all this out. Your day job, especially in the white collar side of a business, your day job goes from, I got to figure all this out, to I got to really make sure that the data that we're entering is done really well. And that mindset shift is probably the biggest hurdle to overcome, Daniel, is, especially if you're a strategist, if you're or a visionary, and you're no longer figuring out a lot of the puzzle pieces. The puzzle shifts. You're now making sure that you have all the puzzle pieces, right? Because there's amazing software that will put the puzzle together for you. You just have to make sure all the pieces are there. So now you become more of an organizational strategist. How are we going to make sure that all the pieces are correct? All the data that we're putting in is accurate. How are we going to make sure the behaviors? You actually have to go in, rather than puzzle solving. I think leadership development is going to be huge in the next iteration of business, because you really have to be able to lead people well to get them to behave in the ways that you need, so that the automation, just the super automation that's coming down the line, can actually do the work properly for you, not hallucinate, not, so I can get into all the AI stuff that we're working on, but I'll just say that is that's the biggest hurdle that I see, is the mindset of what people see their work as. What is your value add to the organization? And that is, whether it's an ERP, in the format we've seen them in the last 20 years, or whether that's introducing agentic AI into your organization, the mindset shift is the same. You have to fundamentally reimagine. The people have to reimagine what their value add to the organization is.
Yeah, let's talk about agentic AI for a minute. Like, what does that look like in some of the business you're working with, in terms of businesses starting to use it across the organization, and why is it so critical to have a change management consultant to help implement those kinds of changes? I mean, that's revolutionary for businesses, is AI.
It is. So, um, a lot of mid-sized companies, they don't have the money to go develop bespoke agents for themselves, and I would say even larger organizations. Speaking to the innovation head of innovation on the IT side for a very large company the other day, and he said 99% of the projects the agents that he's building are never implemented. And it comes down to change management, managing expectations on what an agent can do, managing expectations on how fast you can implement an agent. It's not a software, right? It's not like it's built and now we can use it. Like you have to make sure the data is super clean on the input side. You have to manage retraining it. It's not a person, and it's not rigid software either. It's an agent. It's a learning mechanism. So you have to have the change management for that agent built in to your project. So the struggle is that the bridge is the same. What we need to do, we need to get some agentic AI going. But how we're going to do that is a huge gap. And so we build that bridge. We build the bridge from, you need to do this. How in the world are you going to make this happen? And we use the same methodology. We use agentic AI ourselves. So we use the same methodology, just a lot faster than most consultants can do it.
That's really cool. I want to kind of transition, talk about how, what you do, what I do as a fractional CFO
Yeah,
overlap. How does project change integration, consulting, and financial strategy work, like the work I do, work together? Do you find yourself working alongside a lot of CFOs or financial advisors for their companies?
absolutely. So usually the CFOs bring us the hair on fire, house on fire situations because they're trying to manage costs so tight that when they start losing money because of inefficient or insufficient change management, change navigation, they go, "Oh shoot, like we cannot scale with how we're doing things. There's no way we're actually losing money." So I get calls from CFOs in that regard. Now, CFOs that think more like you, Daniel, that are more future minded and can actually not just manage to the bottom line, but have a risk management mindset for their clients. Those CFOs will bring us in early. Cool, you want to do new software? Awesome. Who's going to write all your new process flows? Who's going to do that? Who are you going to pay to do that? Because that's part of the cost of doing a new software, is making sure that, because you can't just throw it at people or they won't use it. So the risk mitigation strategy, if you have a CFO, I love working with guys like you, Daniel, that really see not just latent data, but can see if we don't do it well, we're going to lose money. We cannot build a house without a foundation. Yeah, so that's how I work with CFOs. It's fun.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. It's like you have to be able to document the process because you could hire somebody, train them, but if you don't have a process for training someone, if that person leaves or gets let go,
Yeah,
you're starting all over again. So having, like you said, who is going to create the SOP? Who's going to write up and document the process for using whatever software or process that you're trying to implement?
absolutely.
So when a bring is in your experience, when a
Hmm.
business brings on both a fractional CFO that focuses on strategy, forward looking, like myself, and someone like yourself, a project change consultant, what have you seen have been some of the biggest impacts to that business, some of the biggest successes for the owner and the business itself?
Yeah. So from my seat, like I mentioned, having a forward thinking CFO really guides, as a trusted advisor, can guide the owner through the fear, right? Through the anxiety of seeing the cash, the cash reserves start to go down. And
Cash reserves.
and yeah, and sometimes if there's no cash reserves and you're taking a loan, and you're betting on yourself. But I think the partnership, look, is really good. And when partnering with a fractional CFO who's a trusted advisor, I really lean into that person to have the ear of the business owner. I don't have to be that person. We're coming in to actually help their teams and be an extra voice for them. So that's really the fun thing, is that and if you're a fractional CFO, you're more on the team, right? You're in the business, and we try to stay adjacent to the business. We are strategy and vision repeaters. This is why you have to fundamentally change how you think about your work. In some cases, like we've turned entire shipping departments' processes on their heads and just said, this will not work. The way you're doing it will not work in your new software. And we're going to have to completely redesign everything that you've built in the last 20 years, and you're going to have to let go of it. And so that anyway, so that's why I like working with the fractional CFOs, because they can keep the vision in front, help keep the vision in front of the owner, and because that's their job, and make sure that the costs are mitigated. Yes, more importantly, the risk is mitigated, and you're maximizing the investment.
That makes a lot of sense, Brian. So, from your perspective, at what stage in a business should they really start thinking about bringing in someone for project change consulting? Is there a certain size of company? Are there any kind of precursors or signs that, you know what, they should be starting to think ahead versus waiting till it's too late?
Well, let's first talk about the SMB market. The value we add there is really in the planning. So it's a deeper planning process, and broader, deeper and broader than, say, an EOS or an operating system. We want to help you plan for the next year to 2 years on the projects that actually need to happen for your growth, and that's would be for a $1 million to about $20 million company. Now, if you get larger than that and you actually have 3 to 4 layers of leadership from the CEO, 3 to 4 plus, right? You're going to need a lot of bandwidth in order to see the ROI on the investment that you're wanting to make. And again, we operate in two spaces. One is when you have a top line strategy of purchasing other companies and integrating them into yours. In order to see both top line and bottom line grow, you have to do integration. I've seen it from the biggest companies in America all the way down to the smallest. If you do not do integration, you will lose both your investment and your cash on those purchases. So it's a critical component of M&A integration. Number two is going to be that software, that large scale software digital transformation. When you're a $30 million plus company, you need a third party coming in for that, 9 to 18 months before you actually go live with the software. And I will include AI and integration in that space as well, because you're not just asking one person to kind of go figure it out. You've got to implement and integrate into the entire business when you're at that scale. So yeah, those are the two kind of inflection points. So for SMBs, I'd say you're looking at a planning play, that surveyor. What's the map, and how are you going to get to 15 to 20 million? And for the folks who are like, I would like to be 150 or 250 million, you're looking at both the surveyor, but also some hands-on project management and implementation build out from our team as well.
Let's talk about mistakes for a moment. I know a lot of business owners can relate to this topic. What are some mistakes that you've seen business owners make, just in general, in their business as they are growing and going from one stage to the next, or implementing big changes in their organization?
Number one, especially related to AI, is FOMO. So you hear of, on the golf course or at a dinner, the CEO next door is doing this and this and this, and this is how much money they saved, or this is how much more revenue they got. That tool may or may not work for you. So don't get FOMO. That's the number one mistake I think owners make. Number two is they if you have a sales minded owner, they believe in their heart that top line will solve all their problems. I just got to get more revenue. Just got to get more revenue, and that'll fix it. So that is one of the big ones. On the other side of the spectrum, you have operationally minded owners, which I am one, and they think that optimizing processes will fix all their problems. Like, if we just get a better sales process, when especially for a mid-sized company, that CEO seat really has to be the face of the organization, both internally and externally. You have to give away operations. And that's the other side of the spectrum, I'd say, on mistakes that I see CEOs and owners make. When it comes to, we've already mentioned it, but when it comes to large scale integrations and really investing capital for that next, growth rocket to go off, I think owners miss the fact that it's going to take more capital than they think. So you cannot be cost uh, risk averse on the front end. You need to think about, what's my risk if I don't invest this money on the back end of this investment. And so you have to shift your mindset from next quarter's earnings to, what's my 5-year target, my 10-year target. And I'm willing to take the pain of the next 2 quarters or 3 on to the bottom line to make sure that we protect the bottom line in 5 years, based on the investment we're making today. So I'd say don't let that's the other mistake I see owners make is they see those numbers go down in the short term and lose sight of the reason they made the investment to begin with, which is long-term growth and stability.
I love those examples. Those are great examples. I completely agree from what my
I thought you would.
yeah. Um, if you would say, if you had advice for owners, what is the one thing that an owner founder should stop doing immediately when it comes to how they manage projects or integrating new systems or processes?
I would say stop looking for it to work day one. Okay, so
Mm, and a healthy
as you
expectations.
yeah, so give it a minute. So owners get impatient with their return on their investment, and they're too quick to scrap the financial outlay that they've just spent lots of time and money on if it doesn't work as fast as they thought it was going to work. You've got to you've got to give it a minute to actually build some momentum and I'm not talking about years. I'm just saying, like, you've got to give it a month, a quarter, and if you've really done well investing in change management, you should start to see some immediate payback in certain spots. But corporately, you've got to give it, sometimes there'll be like pain points and rubs that people you didn't see until you were actually live with the software, live with the agent. You got to be patient and keep the vision in mind, and not just knee jerk, yanking, because you will lose trust with your teams when you do that. The more you do that, and they, if they were involved in a healthy way through the change management and they were really involved in helping the team get around that curve, back to the band analogy, you're going to start to lose their trust as their leader. So don't, I would say, be patient with the investment that you've made.
Makes perfect sense. Let's talk about some practical takeaways for an owner that might be watching this who believes or suspects that some projects are maybe misaligned with what's most important for the organization or some poorly integrated systems have happened. What are the first, say, two or three steps that that owner maybe should take to move in the right direction?
First thing I'd say is get a third party trusted advisor. So you need somebody alongside you that's not in your downline. And you know, you need, and that could be, I mean, that could be a buddy, but it's usually should be somebody that you're paying, so that you're literally investing in the advice that you give and that you're getting, and that will help you take it more seriously. So I would say number one is get a trusted advisor. I would say get that person on board early. Do not think that you can make these decisions for what software you're going to use, how you're going to implement AI. Do not try to do that on your own. You're good at your business. You're good at your product. Do not try to, and you're good at business in general, but you need someone helping you along the way. So I'd say make the decision to get a TA, start that process early, and then the last thing I'd say is understand that you're going to have a lot of grit going through a large scale implementation or change like this. It's going to feel like you're restarting your business, because in essence you are. So do not think that it's going to be just a smooth uphill like this. It's going to be a reimagining. It's going to be more like a rocket ship, a relaunch of the organization from the point that you're at today. So I would put on your entrepreneur hat when you're really trying to grow your business and reimagine where it can go long term.
Makes perfect sense. Are there any tools or systems that you would recommend a business owner may want to look at or use if they're not ready to bring on a consultant right away that will help them?
Yeah, so here's my recommendation for a smaller business. I'd say take the time with your team to write the process flows. I'm doing this with my team. I have a small team, I've got a small business, and we are going through our tech stack and we are saying which tools are we going to use and how are we going to use them, especially with the advent of a lot of great new agents in the last month, right? So we this quarter we're going, okay, we're getting rid of this agent, we're getting rid of that one, we're going to use this one. So I would say stay on top, especially stay on top of the current state of LLMs and how you're using them, because that scope creep will go like this so fast, and you'll start to lose money because everybody's using something different and it's actually less efficient than just going, okay, this agent does 95% of what we want it to do. Everybody's using this one. All of our data flows in here. We can use a RAG backend to make sure. Sorry for the technical jargon, but you can make sure that the data that it's using is your data, not all this other junk out on the internet. So just really hone in for a small business, and then for a large business, I'd say if you're not ready, see how far you can get. See how far you can get. Again, if you're 3, 4 layers deep plus with your organization, as far as your org chart goes, you're going to waste money trying to throw pickles against a window, is the metaphor that I use, to see what sticks, right? So eventually they'll all fall off, even if they stick for a minute. So you really need a better plan and a strategy, and hiring someone like us is right around the corner when you get tired of wasting money trying to do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of size, what does a really well integrated business look like from the inside? How does it feel different on the inside for a business?
I think people know what their role is, and they're not constantly fighting fires. Let me which way do I want to go with this? I'll just say a healthy business, as they adopt new software, moves from like knee jerk trying to fight fires to 80% of the work is flowing, and you're managing the other 20% as the fires. So the processes, the procedures, the flow of the business, day to day, people's jobs, what they do, what they don't do, ordering new materials, getting payroll done, closing the books, all of those things on that you have to do as a business. um, people clearly know what their jobs are. They're flowing in their lane. They're not stepping on each other's toes. There's not a bunch of admin overhead that is you're not handing data back and forth and constantly going, oh shoot, we didn't think about that. There's just a real nice feel in those organizations of busyness but calm, because expectations are really clear, and people know what their jobs are, and the software is aligned with those jobs, that like all that stuff. That there's always going to be that 20% of crazy, right? There's always crazy, but you're not rebuilding how the business flows around the crazy. You're actually built to mitigate the crazy because everything else is flowing so nicely. So that's how I would say a really well integrated business, how it feels.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're coming up on time. And I want to ask, Brian, what is the single most important takeaway for business owners watching this that you would have them take away from this video?
Believe in yourself. Believe in your organization. It can be what you dreamed it to be. So don't hold back on investing and what you have in your hand today. Be willing to let that go so you can take hold of the next thing, and the next iteration of your business. So that's my biggest takeaway I'd tell business owners is be willing to let go of what it looks like, feels like today, the comfort of today, so that you can realize the dreams that you've had for your organization long term.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show here today. If those watching want to reach out to you, how would they get in contact with you? Do you have a website, or kind of what's the best way to reach out? And I'll be sure to put it in the description below.
Yeah, you bet. So you can reach out to me directly, Bryan with a Y, Bryan at cadenceconsultants.com, or our website is www.cadenceconsultants.com. So either way, reach out to me directly, check out the website, and I'm in LinkedIn. The company's in LinkedIn as well. So you can just search Cadence Consulting on LinkedIn or Bryan Burkholder on LinkedIn. Any one of those avenues will be reaching back out to ASAP.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brian, again for being on. And for you viewers, we'll see you in the next one.